Can you talk about developing ideas for your films?
Yeah, so I work with my partner, Michael J. Epstein. We, because we live together, we consume all the same media, and often we just, and we talk constantly about ideas and things. And so we often come at the same ideas at the same time. I don't know why. We're one brain, and so like we'll start talking about ideas, what we want to do next, what kind of ideas we have. And then usually he goes off and we'll write an outline or a treatment or a script for it. And then I come back around and I'm like, okay, I like this, I don't like that, let's fix this, let's punch this up. And that's kind of our process of going back and forth then through the edits. But yeah, usually like it's not like he writes totally in isolation. We've talked about things mostly before he ever sits down. We'll talk about where the story is going, or I'll come at him. He's always annoyed with me because like I come up with scenes. I'm like, this is the movie, and it's like one scene, and it's like it's so important to me, this one scene. He's like, it's not a movie yet, And so it's like we're workshopping how that fits into a bigger thing, and like how we get to that point where I get to have my moment. But yeah, so he's more. He comes from an academic background. So he's a writer anyway. He does research, he's written papers, all that stuff. He's a professor. So I think like that comes much more naturally to him, like actual like sit down and like write the outline, write the script, get it on paper. Because if that was left up to me, like without a deadline, without anything, it would not be good and it wouldn't be fast, So it's just like his strong suit. We each have our strong suits, and that's his. But I always have a lot of input along the way as he's writing, after the first draft's done.
But then you also have your own very clear set of what you do with cinematography and producing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do a lot of the pre-production, finding locations. We work on casting together usually. But that first look through, like swiping, it's like the Tinder swipe on the casting websites. Like, you get a lot of information from like the choice of photo somebody has, or like how they, say their name and their reel. Like often once I hear their voice, I'm like, no, it's wrong. Just weeding through all that stuff. There's so much to do with pre-production, and we both do it, but like a lot of it will come to me. A lot of that planning level of stuff. Yeah.
Do you make changes to the script during that first read?
Usually, like I will just give my opinions on things, or just say like what I don't think is working. Mostly, like if I'm going to actually physically make changes, it'll be to the dialogue. Like I'll comment and be like, no, this wouldn't say this or whatever. But mostly I'll let him take care of that. Yeah.
How many times will you read a screenplay before you give Michael feedback?
Once. I hate reading screenplays, which is like horrible for a DP to say. Especially like if people aren't sure they're hiring me yet, I'm like, I'm gonna read it once I'm hired. I need to be paid. But yeah, like I hate rereading stuff until there's been major changes. Yeah. So yeah, I'll read it once through. If I need to like reread a passage, or, ask a question if something doesn't make sense to me, like I'll backtrack and read it again. But yeah, it'll be a first read through before he gets all my opinions. I'm not quiet about it.
What's your process for making a screenplay better?
I think it's changing with time. Like I was saying before about how like our first movie has like an 8-minute monologue at the end, like to camera. And it's like, you realize that doesn't work, So the things that didn't work on the previous movie, I'm like, want to make sure I don't fall into those pitfalls again on this, on the next one. But for me, it's a lot of like character and dialogue, like trying to make sure that I think this woman would say that, or I think this makes sense for the character. So those little punch-ups is what I'm more interested in than just like structurally, what is happening. It's the moments of the conversations for me.
Well, you mentioned earlier in the interview that you're a fast learner. So it sounds like when either something doesn't work for the two of you, or if you go to a festival screening and you're noticing like, okay, the audience is reacting weirdly, then it sounds like you adjust it very quickly for the next.
Yeah, for sure. Or even for that same movie. And we did a vampire movie called Blood of the Tribbids. And it's kind of like a very patriarchal movie where like, the women and men are separated. We showed how the men get their blood to survive. And we just like didn't think it was that important, like to show how the women did it. And then when we had our first screening, that was the number one question. It was the mythology. And I was like, oh, you guys really care about the mythology here. So we went back and like actually filmed another scene. So before we released it, it had like a little scene in it. And it's not a great scene, but it answers the question, you know? So yeah, you can still, at least on the indie level, it's nice, you can still react. But different audiences will react to different things, you know? You'll get a laugh in one audience that you won't get at another one. And so it's good, like, that's what is really good about festivals for me, is hearing different audiences, you know? Because if you get one laugher in the audience, suddenly it's a comedy and everybody's laughing. And I'm never offended by that, even if it's not necessarily a comedy, because Below the Tribbles isn't really, but has comedic moments. So if people want to laugh at that, great. Like, have fun with it. It's a campy movie. But this most recent movie we did it has like a lot more straight ahead humor. It's a mockumentary. And so there were a lot of things in there I didn't know if it would land. Like, there's some jokes about like Vietnam and how it affected movies for 20 years, you know? And I'm like, is this gonna land? Like, do people remember Vietnam? You know? And like, is it gonna land? And we were in another country and it did. Like, people thought it was really funny. So, but now I'll see on the next audience, maybe people will be offended or not get it or not understand like that there is that kind of history of Vietnam movies. So yeah, it's a learning experience. And I think like at our level, I can make changes right up till I hit deliver on whatever distribution platform we're going to.
What kind of questions do you ask when trying to make the screenplay better? Are you asking them to yourself? Are you asking them to Michael?
I think to both of us, you know, it's trying to figure out like, does the story make sense? And then do the characters make sense? Is it to our taste? Does it have enough of our personality in it? That kind of stuff. Like, is it something we actually want to do? You know, like we've written screenplays and we're like, you know, it feels wrong or whatever, you know. I don't love like movies about female competition so much. And Michael had like a screenplay that was about two actors vying for the same role. And I was like, I don't know how to make this movie as a feminist totally. I think it's in there somewhere and we just kind of hit a brick wall on it, you know. And that's fine. You move on to the next idea, you know, and like that might be a thing to come back around to later when I have like a little more clarity on it. So yeah, and I think it's okay to abandon at the script stage, not once you've shot. I hate abandoning a project once crew and actors have been involved. But at the script stage, that's your moment to have total freedom to quit on something, I think. But yeah, it's the little things and making sure it's something that excites us. I think that's the biggest thing is like, can we have full enthusiasm to do this for a year or two and then go out and talk about it and promote it as our brand?
So that would happen, the two of you, or Michael would write the first draft, he'd show it to you, and you finally decide together, I don't think we want to invest time in this. That's happened before? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, usually it happens because of lack of resources. Like, you look at it and are like, all right, this is just going to cost way too much money, and we don't have it, but we'll hold on to it. You know, it's a finished script. It's never a bad thing to have extra scripts around in case somebody with money comes knocking someday, you know, like, what else you got? I'm like, well, I got 20 of these, you know. But generally we don't like have something really polished if we're not gonna like go into production on it. But yeah, I think it's more an enthusiasm thing than anything as far as which thing we're gonna go to and what can we afford to make without too much trouble. Because we are fully independent still, fortunately, unfortunately.
Was there any way to make the two actors vying for the same role less catfighty? I mean, was there a way to make it more empowering or no? It's just
I think it's in there. I think, and it's certainly not the intention of the script to be it, but like I'm thinking about it because I think a lot of women in the industry especially is like, there can be one. You know, we talked about that before. I'm like often the only one in the room. And like once they've got one, they already fulfilled their little quota and they're good. You know, they have diversity. So I think there is like an inherent competition amongst women because like we're not used to like allowing the space for another one because it's never been allowed from the outside for us. So I think like I maybe overthought the script a little too much because I'm like, how can we comment on this and have it be empowering at the same time? And I think it's in there somewhere. I just, you know, I don't want to make it and have that get lost and accidentally make something misogynistic, you know? Because I think I have seen movies like that where it's like, what are you saying in the end? You know, I want any thematic message like that to be very clear what my position is.
Well, I mean, there's already been tons of shows and series. I'm trying to think of the one with Reese Witherspoon and Laura Dern, and it's great. It's beautifully shot, and Shailene Woodley, forgive me, I'm blanking on the name of it. I watched it, and it was great scenarios, but it's like I've already seen this a million times, and
Sunset Boulevard is already perfect.
Yeah. So it's hard when you're seeing the same sort, and it's the same in the corporate world, I'm sure too. Just but yeah, so something. Just wasn't sure if you could make one of them an alien or something. Somehow make it
Add
interesting.
a monster. That's always the answer. One of them is a monster. Yeah.
I think we have a quote from you here.
Oh God. What did past me think?
It says here, I love leaving a movie and having something to think about. I feel a responsibility, especially as an indie filmmaker, to have something to say.
Yeah. All right.
I like
Sounds
that.
Smart. No, certainly, like, I love movies with themes. Theme is most important to me above plot, character, any of that. Because that is the thing that will stick with you. Like, what was this movie about? How did it make me feel? Did it make me think about, like, philosophically the world? I like my brain likes puzzles, and it likes to eke that stuff out. Like, what was the intent and what are they saying? So I think, I always try to have something, in the fun. I think genre, horror, sci-fi, all that is the perfect playground for inserting themes or thoughts about how the world functions, or whatever you want to talk about, because it's candy coated by, like, the fun stuff. But like, to me, if it's just like a slasher and there's no backstory or something like that you're trying to say with it to change it from what it is, which is like almost nothing other than just killing women, it's not that interesting to me. If it's just a series of kills, that's not something I'm gonna, like, think about fondly later.